The late 70s, early 80s, HIV started to come out. You know, there was a buzz in the community that there was this disease that was out there that were killing, Fafa females. And at that time, after we had marched back in the 80s and hearing this buzz, many of the guys and the women, we all kind of went back into the closet. This was something we couldn't deal with. Being with the climate of America at that time, the height of gay bashing was at its highest. So you can imagine what it was like for Samoans or for Pacific Islanders, having to deal with all the stigma that came along with HIV and with people dying. The Castro was like a cemetery. You would go down to the Castro and you'd see many, many individuals with lesions and sores and bruises. And some of our brothers and sisters who became infected with it also started dying. Many started going back to Samoa to want to die and to be rejected by their family because they didn't really understand what was going on. So as that all was going on, I too myself at one time had gotten very sick. And I was living in the avenues in San Francisco with another Fafafinge, and it was like a party house back in that day. And when I became sick, my friends would come to the door and they'd stand at a distance and they'd go, "Well, but they never came into the room." And that was an indication that it was also affecting our community. Well, I got so sick, I didn't even want to go to the doctors for fear that I might have been one of those individuals that had contacted that. So word got back to my parents, and Samoan parents. My mother finally, at that time there's no cell phone, so she had to come directly to my apartment with my father and my stepfather, and they banged on the door. And when they saw me, I was pretty much emaciated, just really gaunt, and I was just fearful of going to the doctors because I didn't want to hear that I too might be one of these statistics of Pacific Islanders who were going to die from AIDS. My mother immediately took me, not to the doctors, but to get fulfilled. Yeah, I was like, okay, we'll do that. So we had 3 sessions with this woman who fulfilled me. It was great because, I started to get bowel movements, so that was good. But still, that fear, even my parents had they didn't want to hear the inevitable. I already thought I was gonna die. It was a death sentence because of all of what was happening in the media and what we see. San Francisco just blew up. Everybody died of AIDS, and I was gonna be one of them. Well, finally, they took me to the doctors. They gave me blood tests, came back, gave me a shot. I said, okay, you'll be fine in a couple of days. I was like, well, what's wrong with him? Well, did you eat some bad pork? Did you, he just ate some bad food. My mother looked at me, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I don't have AIDS. And she's like, see, you have to cook the food. And I could really remember the day I ate the bad pork. I just ground it, put some vinegar and soy sauce and sugar and ate it. 2 days later, I was sick, but it took me a month and a half to go to the doctor. So that's what I'm saying, is that you have to use humor sometimes in these kind of situations. So I got better. I cussed out my friends who didn't want to come in through the door and telling them, you see what this has done to us? We've already written a death sentence for each other because we sneezed, because what was happening in the media. But what had happened in the media is CNN at one time reported that the first case of AIDS was now in the islands. And that individual was in pain. They panned through the hospital to show the family, and they all had fans covering their face. This individual I did know. He did party in San Francisco, and he did go home to die, but he did not deserve to die without somebody loving him. Rumors were they just let him lay there. They didn't know what to do, just morphined him up, but he was still screaming in pain. His family didn't even want to be in the same room with him for fear that they might catch them. So 35 years later, here we are, having these discussions. But you gotta remember, from whence we came, we can never go back there.
That's right.
And with this current administration, I see that happening. People are starting to go back into closets. People are starting to not wanting to advocate for what is right, for what we need. So we have to really stand stronger and advocate for the young people. So Utopia San Francisco is currently going through a little change because the triple OGs, the old gay guys, are tired. I just made 60, and I am so proud to make 60 because there are not many of us around to do the work. But what makes me even prouder is that there are young bucks, young men and women who are coming up through the ranks, who are college-educated, young individuals, who are going to take us further into our community, into our faith-based churches, to let our Veaveas know that you have a moral responsibility to talk to your congregation, to teach them about diabetes, to teach them about safe sex, what a condom is. That is part of your job as a Veavea. Not to collect every month. No, you need to give back. My grandfather was a Veavea also. As I said, he was a missionary. And rumor also had it that he was a healer in our Samoan community. My grandfather balanced both Christianity and our indigenous ways of healing. And I used to always sit down and I go, you know, Grandpa, you're a hypocrite. He goes, what? And I go, how can you practice Christianity? And how can you still practice these old traditional Samoan ways? In the Bible, they say it's like Satanism. You know, it's a little shady. And he goes, you never talk to me like that, man. You know, he took it there, and I was like, I'm just saying. But then he turned around and says, you know what? You're right. But you cannot be a Samoan. And if you're a healer, that's a gift. And you see, being a Veavea helps raise my family, helps me to travel, but I will never let go of my Samoan ways. And that's what really showed me that even though he could be a Veavea of a church, he could still believe in his indigenous ways of healing, of talking to our ancestors, of providing for his family. So both can work. So if you do work in the community, we need to sit down and have the conversations with our Veaveas, with our faith leaders, and say, listen, you hold the key in our community. Let's work together. Don't be afraid. I don't fight. I just educate. And it'll work. So I challenge each and every one of you today, right now, take your phones out. Tag yourself in here at Pasifika Pride. Let your family know that there is a movement of inclusion, that we are all families. That is so important that we do not let more of our individuals slip through the cracks, go back into the closets, and live a miserable life. Because today, what are we doing? We are living. We are educating. There are people here who are going to tell you so many stories of inclusion, so many stories of successes. We are the ones who are taking it to the next generation. So I humbly am so grateful for Pasifika Pride. Y'all did it. You're the first to do it. San Francisco, what's going on? Who's next? We need to get all our people together, to come together, to lift each other up, because that's what we were here for.